Do without will shall be the whole of the law. In today's Tarot Tuesday video, we're going to be looking at the symbolism of the Chariot across 9 classic tarot decks. The attributes are the same across all 9 decks. The element is water, relating to west, fall, and twilight. The color is gold or orangish yellow. The astrological ruler is Cancer. The esoteric title is The Child of the Powers of Water. The intelligence is the intelligence of the House of Influence. The Hebrew letter is Chet, meaning fence, given a value of 8. The position on the Tree of Life is the path between Binah and Geburah, giving it a Kabbalistic title, The Understanding of Severity. The numerology is 7, pointing to reflection, assessment, motives, spirituality, wisdom, and perfect order. It rules the dates of June 21st through July 21st. In most decks, this is Atu 7, making it the 8th major arcana, but in the Grand Etala and Etala 3, it is in the position of the Atu 21, making it the 22nd major arcana and the last card of the cycle. In all the other decks, this position is given to the world. In the Etala 3 deck, the title is changed to the African Despot. I'll talk a little bit about my thoughts on the title and the position change and the overall symbolism in the Chariot before moving on to what Sir Lowe has to say about the card. The African Despot title references despotic autocracy involving tyrannical rule of elites and individuals that hold virtually absolute power and authority irrespective of common or beneficial will. When thinking about the history of colonial rule in Africa as a surface-level representation of this deplorable concept, we can see a connection between the governance or law of the land, or the body, the chariot, being in direct conflict with the will of the soul of that body or land. Just as our ego often exerts a deplorable will of its own over the spiritual or true will of our own soul within our own bodies. This interpretation of the card is congruent to the Rider-Waite version of he who has led captivity captive, answered the Sphinx, and above all triumphed over the mind. His mastery is over physicality and things external to him. While he can answer the Sphinx, he could not answer the inquiries of the High Priestess and pass between the pillars of the temple to the inner sanctum. We can easily see the connection in the switch cards in these decks between the chariot and the world, the physical body and physicality, the chariot that moves, and the travel expressed in the world. His royalty tends to be that of conquest and is not the vested royalty of the emperor. This echoes Ouspensky's conclusions that the chariot represents man, self-suggestion, self-deceit, pseudo-occultism, and artificial means of attainment. While this charioteer has achieved more than the trickster magician who has discovered his tools and powers, he has used those means to effect change outwardly, giving a false sense of accomplishment. But he has yet to turn those powers inward, and thus he has much further to attain on this path. The fact that Etala decks have this as the conclusion or height of a psychological cycle leads me to agree with Waite in his conclusions under the Moon card, where he calls the Etala editions debased. These are just my personal opinions, but despite some logic being found to the changes, I find the Etala decks subpar to the other decks, and I find all the decks subpar to the lucidity of the Thoth deck. But this is only my opinion, and I still find value in all these decks. There may be more use and accuracy in other decks for other people, and those experiences and opinions are just as valid as my own. Under the title The Chariot, Sir Lowe writes, the 7th enigma of the tarot pack. It depicts a youth clad in a cuirass bearing a scepter and riding in a symbolic chariot. He incarnates the higher principles of man's nature. In the chariot there can be seen an emblem of the Egyptian winged globe, representing the sublimation of matter and its evolutive motion. Furthermore, the chariot has red wheels, which are related to the whirlwinds of fire in the visions of Ezekiel. These wheels stand out in contrast to the blue canopy, or pallium, which covers the chariot, signifying the difference between the absolute and the relative. The allegory of this image is reflected in its smallest details. So, for example, the cuirass of the chariot represents his defense against the baser forces of life. It is secured with 5 gold studs denoting the 4 elements and the quintessence. On his shoulders there are 2 crescent moons, representing the world of forms. The chariot is drawn by what at first seems to be a pair of sphinxes, but which is in fact a 2-headed amphibia, symbolizing the hostile forces which one must subjugate in order to go forward, in the same way as the 2 serpents counterbalance one another in the caduceus. Basil Valentin, in his Les Eaux des Philosophes, Paris 1660, illustrates this principle of duality with the serpent coiled round the sun and moon, its extremities bearing the likeness of a lion and an eagle. This tarot mystery, then, is associated with concepts of self-control, progress, and victory. I will add that while the charioteer may not have the sublimation of power over the internal forces, his power over the external forces mark a definitive step on the path and true progress. What symbolism and ideas do you associate with the chariot? Thanks for watching. Love is the law, love under will.